It is very interesting that there is no reference to drums or timbrel, whichever term you can refer to it, being used in the New Testament. Historical records showed that drumming and dancing were banned because of their association with common and profane things out there. Therefore, in the New Testament, they are not mentioned. We are not suggesting, however, here that drums or dancing are wrong in themselves. All we are saying tonight is that they were not used in the sanctuary. The drums and dancing were not used inside the sanctuary, but only during festive occasions. Drums were not part of the prescribed musical instruments for worship. Therefore, it is not right to ban, of course, from what we've just said, it is not right for us to ban the use of instruments and choral music because of its absence in the New Testament. According to some writer by name Bakyoki, 2000, and another one, many authors here, the Old Testament, they are saying that the Old Testament worship was selective in its choice of musical instruments to use in worship compared to what was used in the festivals. They were very, very discriminative. Just like we have been talking about the entire week, that even our music, our songs, we must exercise a higher degree of discrimination. So even when it comes to musical instruments, the same thing is appearing here. Now, the New Testament church does not use instruments because there are two main reasons why, according to researchers, they are saying there are two main reasons why the New Testament church does not use instruments. Number one, the musical instruments were associated with pagan worship and debauchery of Romans and Greeks. And so they sought to distinguish themselves from such practices. Number two, the other reason why the New Testament is not employing musical instruments is that the Roman persecution of the church would not allow the church to use instruments in worship such as trumpets and cymbals, for this would draw the attention of their adversary. So the main reason there is when they use instruments, they are drawing the attention of their what? Their enemy. Someone cracked a joke. In the animal jungle, the fox was known for many unique things, but the most profound was that it owned and beat drums. One day, the hyena stole one of his drums. That belonged, of course, to the fox family. Now, you see, the fox lived in the northern end of the jungle, and the hyena lived in the southern side of the jungle. Now, my question is, will the hyena beat the drum? It's only Val who is listening to this. I've seen the impact of what I've said. Let me come up again. I want you to get the logic in that short imagery. Someone cracked a joke. In the animal jungle, the fox was known for many unique things, but the most profound and beat drums. That is the only animal that was known in the animal jungle for what? For beating drums, for owning and beating drums. One day, the hyena stole one of the drums from the fox family. Now, you see, the fox, we are told that the fox lived in the northern end of the jungle, and the hyena lived in the southern side of the jungle. Now, my question is, will the hyena beat the drum? If it does, logically, if it's going to beat the drum, the entire animal jungle will know that the hyena is a thief. Because the only animal that is known for what? For beating drums is what? The fox family. And then one day you hear the drums from the southern part. What comes to your mind? Those guys have stolen drums from where? Right? So, of what use is the drum if he cannot use it? Because when the hyena stole that drum, then of course he knows the work of the drum is to beat. When he took the rungu to begin beating the drum, he remembered it is going to make what? Noise. It's going to make sound. And so the entire animal jungle will know that they have stolen. So of what use is the drum if he cannot use it? Because if he uses it, he is going to be known that he has stolen the drum. Zwingli and John Calvin, from history, we are told that they banned the use of instruments in worship. They did not, however, despise music or the instruments, but they were making a strong distinction as reformers then between what was practiced in the Roman church and what they wanted for their own congregation, because they were reformers. They were protesting from the Roman Catholic Church. Valuable contributions to our congregational singing and leadership. Melodic support, color, strength, energy, interpretive meaning, all that. While all instruments may be lawful for use in worship, all may not be expedient. In the early Christians, if the early Christians avoided certain instruments because of their association with pagan rituals and false worship, then we may make comparable decisions about instruments or styles of music today. On the other hand, some good things can be redeemed from misuse and be appropriated for the work of the Lord. Now, this line between liberty and legalism requires spiritual wisdom. Wisdom that God promises to give liberally when we ask in faith. James chapter 1 verse 5. The nature of sacred music is derived from its task. Of course, we have said it throughout this week, that the need to communicate God's truth and effect a spiritual growth for both the musician and who? The listener. So it is the nature of the church to be conservative, therefore. We need to be conservative. We need not to be ahead. After all, its task is to preserve the gospel so that it may be communicated to each new generation. Now, what if we change the fundamentals, the rudimentals of our church regarding music today? What shall we leave as a legacy to our children and our grandchildren? It is safer to approach sacred music with this understanding in order to avoid faults scattered in the music world today. Dancing in worship. About instruments, that's the much we can say. So these instruments that we are using in our church, they are not evil in themselves. But like C.D. Brooks has put it, what is the problem? How and who is seated? Who is playing them and how is he doing it? That is where the problem is. But however, we have said from history, we have quoted here and there, that we need to be very careful, so that we do not be ambiguous in our message when it comes to musical instruments. Just as applause or clapping, waving of hands, and drumming in the church, dancing is also making its way into some of our churches, the caged bird. But a careful study will show that scripture and history indicate that dancing was never part of divine worship in the temple, in the synagogue, or even in the early church. Dancing was never part of this. Number two, study is showing that of the 28 references to dance or dancing in the Old Testament, only 4 of the 28 references made refer to religious dancing. We have no time to give you all the verses. There are so many. But none of these relate to worship in God's house. And 2 of them may not actually refer to dancing at all. Number 3, singing in Bible times was done mostly in conjunction with the celebration of religious events. especially the annual festivals. So the dance was performed outside the temple by women, children, and men, or even separate groups, and not as male-female partners singing together. Separate women, children, and men and women separate, but not as male-female, that he never instructed